Achieved.
What is up, everybody, and welcome back. Studio de Jeffrey rides again. It's been a long time, and I should not have left you without some dope videos to step to. A couple of good topics for us today is my buddy Jon Machota over there at The Athletic. He's one of the good ones. The machete is what I call Jon Machota. And he ran a Cowboys survey, and I just want to go over the results with you guys and see if we agree or disagree with how the people have voted, and also talk about the most underrated Dallas Cowboy according to Pro Football Focus. So we got some really good topics today. First one, Cowboys survey results on The Athletic. I'm not going to give you the full results because, it's their content. The Machete did a lot of work here, but I'll give you who won each category and tell you if I agree or disagree. So, Cowboys survey. Question number 1. How long before the Cowboys win another Super Bowl? The top answer by far was they'll win a Super Bowl within the next 5 years. And I think that speaks to a lot of things. I think it speaks to the natural optimism of off seasons. I think it speaks to, I don't want to say a lack of understanding, because I think a lot of people get it, but it's really hard to win a Super Bowl. The odds are the Cowboys are not going to win a Super Bowl in the next 5 years. That's the odds. You can be the best team in the NFC each of the next 5 years, and the odds are probably still that you wouldn't win a Super Bowl. So it's hard. It's definitely possible, and I hope that they do, and I think they'll be able to compete for it. But we are now a quarter century without seeing an NFC title game, and to have the expectation that they win a Super Bowl in the next 5 years, that'd be tough. There's one every year. It would be great. I mean, I've got as much optimism, I think, as anybody now that the head coach who was holding you back is no longer here, and hopefully Mike McCarthy is a significant upgrade on game days, and that the game plan on offense and defense is improved. And so I totally get the optimism, but I will disagree. Will the Cowboys win a Super Bowl in the next 5 years? I think you can say yes. You just have to know that the odds are against you. And I want to say yes. Drew Brees will be gone from the Saints in a year or two. Then all you got to do is just run through the NFC, no problem. And then you got to see either Patty or Lamar probably in the Super Bowl. The odds are no, but I'm going to go yes as well. I'll say they win one. How many games will the Cowboys win this season? The vast majority of people voted 10 or 11. Well, if you're going to vote 10 or 11, why don't you grow a pair and go all the way up to 12 or more? That was an option, What's the most likely answer? I think, how many games will the Cowboys win this season? When I ran through their schedule, unfortunately, I found like 12 wins, maybe even 13. But I know that that's really optimistic. But I think it's possible. It is totally possible with this roster. If you get better coaching, if your special teams aren't bad, and if your defense is okay, this team can absolutely win 12 games. Absolutely. They can win 13. Absolutely. I just wonder, is that too aggressive as my guess? I want my guess to be right, so I'm trying to factor in what could go wrong, the hiccup game or two. Like, if this team played the Jets a year ago, the Bills a year ago, there were the bad quarterbacks that the Cowboys played where they weren't able to win a game. They'd win those games right now. Right now. Because you wouldn't just rush 4 people on every play and make bad quarterbacks feel incredibly comfortable in the pocket. You would attack bad quarterbacks, and you would win the games against the bad quarterbacks. That would happen. I'm going to pick 11. I'm going to say the Cowboys win 11 games this year, which would put me in the majority of the Dallas Cowboys survey on The Athletic. What grade would you give the Cowboys for their offseason? The vast majority, not vast majority, but the majority, the winning answer was A. And I do think A and B are the only options. The draft was really good. Free agency was good. I think a lot of people would love to see a splash added in free agency, But they did what I think is really wise in today's NFL, which is they created a giant depth chart at corner. And at cornerback, they're now going to say, go compete. Let's see who's the best. Let's see who makes the team. With Aldon Smith reinstated, if Randy Gregory's reinstated, they're going to have great competition at defensive end just to make the roster. Shoring up temporarily defensive tackle with the aging veterans. I think Poe and McCoy, those are good deals to shore that up temporarily. It's good deals. Cam Irving, we'll see, but it's a guy that had a lot of potential coming into the league. I loved him as a center. I didn't love him as a tackle, but we'll see. They've got competition on the offensive line. I think they've done a really good job of building a roster that's got competition throughout, and you'll earn your spot on this team. Nothing's going to be given to anybody. You're going to earn your spot on this team. So for their offseason, I give them a B+, maybe B+. And I think that's the worst that you can give them, actually. Excuse me. It is tough that you lost Byron Jones, you lost Robert Quinn, you lost Randall Cobb, and you didn't replace Byron Jones. You replaced him with bodies. You didn't replace Robert Quinn. You can be optimistic and hopeful for Aldon Smith to be that guy, but you didn't replace a double-digit sack guy. You did replace Randall Cobb. But in other ways, they really improved the roster. So, yeah, I'll go B+. B+ for the offseason. Who is the team's most valuable player? I won't tell you who won the poll because that should be obvious because, well, it's obvious because of the position he plays. But 17% of people voted for Zeke. Don't do that. We're doing a good job now. We're doing a lot better job now of realizing don't you call a running back a team's MVP. Just don't do it. They're way too dependent on their surroundings, and they should never make huge money. But I do hope they end up rich. Like, I'm pulling for the individual. I'm just not pulling for them to get a big salary because there's a salary cap, and I can replace them for cheap. The next category, who will start? By the way, if I had to pick the team's most valuable player, 1 is Dak. 2 is either Amari Cooper or an offensive lineman. Like, the names that are competing to be the second most valuable player on the Cowboys are Amari Cooper, Lyle Collins, Zach Martin, Tyron Smith, Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb. Then Tank Lawrence. That's probably about it. Who will start at left guard this season? The winner was Connor Williams, and I think I agree, but that's because I like to play things safe. I'll just take the guy who's been a starter there. But maybe Tyler Biadasz wins the center job, and maybe Connor McGovern wins the left guard job. Maybe Joe Looney they want to start with at center because he has the experience, and Connor McGovern wins the left guard job. That's the one that's up in the air that I don't think there's a great right answer because we just don't know. And so you fall back on the incumbent. You say, I'll just go Connor Williams and hope for him to be the best option out of those guys. Who's the most overrated player on the roster? They didn't give options on this one. It was just write-ins. And Jalen Smith won the vote, followed by Ezekiel Elliott. Pretty close between those two. And I don't love doing that topic because I just think it's kind of mean-spirited. But I probably agree that it's Jalen or Zeke. It's definitely one of those two. But I don't want to say it out loud. So don't listen to this part of the video because it's mean. They're human. Nobody wants to be called overrated. But they have really big salaries, and Zeke's not an elite back to me. I think the volume, you'll always have people who can point to, but look how many yards he ran for. Yeah, he got a lot of carries. You get 4.5 yards on a whole bunch of carries. But Zeke has lost what he had when he was in college. Zeke had the juice, like the long speed, the ability to make people miss or run them over or hurdle them. Like, he had everything. He was an incredible prospect. But he has turned into more of a just power run. Just find the hole and lean into it and pull defenders. And I'd love to see him get back to the point where he can make people miss and you can have big gains, not 4 carries of 20 yards on 300 carries. You got to have more big plays than that. Tony Pollard had just as many on 80 carries. So I need that back from Zeke. And so I don't think that the guy that was on the field last year, that's not an elite running back. He's a solid running back. Solid running back that's paid like he's incredible. So I'd love to see him. And maybe having a full offseason in camp or whatever version of that they get instead of the holdout, maybe that'll help. But I do agree with what's been picked there in those two players. What's your confidence level in Mike McCarthy? 5 is the highest and 1 is the lowest. I'm going to go with a 3.5, which is cheating because the answers are 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. But I'll go 3.5. I'm really confident that he's going to be better than Jason Garrett because Jason Garrett is not a good NFL head coach. But Mike McCarthy's got to prove it. You know, he lost his last job. He didn't voluntarily retire. Like, he lost his last job. So we have to see that he really has evolved in some ways and that he can still bring something that is a net positive on Sundays to a football team. So I'm right in the middle, a little bit above the middle in terms of my confidence level in McCarthy. In the offseason, I think we tend to be optimistic. You definitely tend to be optimistic when you think they've moved on from a guy who wasn't good at his job. So I'll go 3.5. That's my confidence level in McCarthy, 3.5 to 4. Which new assistant coach will make the biggest positive impact? I think the two main guys that this is between are Mike Nolan and John Fossil. John Fossil wins the vote, probably because your special teams were so atrocious a year ago that it'll be easy. For John Fossil, it's easy to be a giant improvement. Just have any idea what you're doing, and it'll be a giant improvement for the Cowboys special teams. Mike Nolan, it's kind of the same thing. Can you get guys to actually do their job? Because they didn't last year. Guys didn't even fill their gaps last year. It was incredible. So I'll go John Fossil 2 because I think your special teams will go from 30th or whatever they were to at least middle of the pack, and that'll be big for this team. What do the Cowboys have to do this season for you to consider it a success? I think they at least have to make the playoffs. Would that be successful, though? They have stated, as an organization, the NFC Title Game. And I think NFC Title Game is no doubt a successful season. But again, you're going back to this stuff is harder than you think it is. Like we think, well, it's been 25 years, and so they're due. Well, no, this is just 1 year. What each individual year is its own year. It doesn't care what you've done over the last 25. Getting to an NFC Title Game is hard. You have to be one of the best teams in the NFC, and you probably have to catch some luck. But I'll agree with that just because, you know, it's more emotional than intellectual. It's just that it's been long enough that your roster's been good enough that you should have been there at some point. And so, yes, for me, that's what it takes for it to be a success. And maybe I'll change my mind. Maybe they win the division and they lose a really good game where they play well, but the other team just plays a little bit better, and so they come up just short of the NFC title game. I would be fine with that. It just depends how it goes, but I'll start with, yeah, sure, NFC title game. How should the Cowboys handle Dak's contract situation? 30, 40, 50, 59, and 8 is 67. So at least 2/3 of the people are saying sign him long term. It's just a matter of if they agree that he should be the NFL's highest paid player or not. The part that I think is worth mentioning here is it's under 9% of people who say let him play under the franchise tag and look for his replacement. So I do think the Cowboy fan base is smarter than sometimes it seems, because some people can just be really vocal. You know, if you're a hater of something, you're very vocal. But less than 9% of respondents think you should just let him play it out and look for his replacement. And that's encouraging. It gives me faith in the Cowboys fan base that you understand that your quarterback is very good and you should be absolutely trying to keep him. Will Dak Prescott be the Cowboys' starting quarterback in 2025? The response ended up being yes, and I agree with that. Yes, he will. Which player's departure will be the toughest to replace? The winner was Travis Frederick, and I actually agree with that, which is interesting because Robert Quinn did his job better than Travis Frederick last year. Byron Jones did his job better than Travis Frederick last year. Randall Cobb probably did his job better than Travis Frederick last year, but Cobb's replaced. CeeDee Lamb can replace Randall Cobb. Done. Byron Jones, you haven't replaced him individually, but they're going to try really hard with numbers and depth to be able to be good at corner. Robert Quinn, you're not going to replace him individually, but between Aldon Smith and the return of Tyrone Crawford and the rest of your depth chart, maybe Randy Gregory, like you got a shot to replace Robert Quinn. And Travis Frederick, it's a free-for-all of really unproven guys. And so I think the tough part to replace about Travis Frederick isn't going to be how good he was physically, because he retired because I think he didn't think he was good enough physically to be what he thinks he should be. But mentally, that job's tough. And he was great at it. He'd seen everything. So I agree. Travis Frederick will be the toughest guy to replace. Most valuable offseason addition, it's CeeDee Lamb. Just CeeDee Lamb. Aldon Smith could surprise, and you could look back at that and be like, well, that was the most important addition. He got 12 freaking sacks. Like that possibility exists, but I wouldn't count on it. I think that would be foolish to count on. Trayvon Diggs has a chance to be a really valuable offseason addition. Hopefully Neville Gallimore could be that. Heck, if Tyler Biadasz is a starting center, he could be a valuable offseason addition. Gerald McCoy, I think, has a chance to be that. If something were to happen to Dak and Dalton had to play and he played well, there's a chance of that. But CeeDee Lamb's the most valuable offseason addition, and that one's easy. Who should get the most targets this season? Amari Cooper overwhelmingly won this poll, and I agree with that. He was the best guy on this team in terms of yards per route run, in terms of, you can look up all sorts of receiver metrics. Cooper's still the man in terms of getting separation and making big plays for you. Amari Cooper should get the most targets this season. Next season, maybe CeeDee Lamb. Just telling you. Who will have the most interceptions this year? Ooh, this one was really close. The winner was Jordan Lewis, which is interesting. People love Jordan Lewis. I love Jordan Lewis. I don't know if he's going to be a starter. So I will go with my guy again. Only 9% of people went this way. I say Xavier Woods is going to lead the team in interceptions with 4 or 5. Xavier Woods. Who will lead the team in sacks? Tank. The end. Alden's the wild card would be if Tank has another 5-sack season. He won't. Tank will have 10 to 12 sacks, and he'll lead the team. There's no other real option other than a giant surprise from Aldon Smith. Zeke's averaged almost 21 carries per game during his career. Where would you like to see that average in 2020? The winner, 15 to 20. So a little bit less than he's been used historically is what the fans want to see. And I agree with that. Get him between 15 and 18 carries a game. Get Pollard 7 to 10 carries a game. If you want to run the ball that much, you don't have to. Feel free not to. But yeah, split that thing up a little bit, Let's see. Let's see if that juice that Tony Pollard's got holds up over time. And then the last thing that I wanted to talk about real quick, I don't need any references for it, is Pro Football Focus's most underrated player on every NFL team. They did that story, was it yesterday? Yesterday, I think. It was on Poof. They went with Clinton-Dix for the Cowboys. And if they're right, I think that's a big boost for the Cowboys. I think that Clinton-Dix, to me, has always been kind of a roller coaster player. I think if you talk to people who really follow the Packers, they would tell you the same thing. But he's graded out solidly with Pro Football Focus every year of his career. I think they said at least a 67 or better. So if he's a solid presence and a considerable upgrade over what Jeff Heath gave you a year ago, then that's really helpful. I think that's really helpful for this team. If he's able to really help you in coverage and be a more dependable tackler than he's been at times, Clinton-Dix being your most underrated player would be a good thing. The question I have there is, who would be the best looking back? Like, okay, the season's over. So-and-so, it turns out, was your most underrated player. Which guy like that could mean the most for your team? And that answer is Aldon Smith, right? If he's your most underrated coming into the year, or Randy Gregory or Gerald McCoy, then it would mean that one of those guys is like 8 or 10 sacks, and like that really impacts your team. Or if Trayvon Diggs were to step in and be a really good starting cornerback, well, then him being your most underrated player going into the year, that would be a really good thing. Leave in the comments, youtube.com/Jeff Kavanaugh, what you want to talk about tomorrow. It's good to be back. Good to see you guys. Had a nice little recharge and might need another one now with the way the world's going. I think a lot of people might need a recharge. But leave in the comments what you want to talk about tomorrow. I will absolutely try to take care of you. And thanks. Thanks for tuning in. And we'll be on the radio here in a bit on 105.3 The Fan. Check 105.3thefan.com. And I love you guys.